What's up, everybody? Welcome to Comic Book Radio. I'm your host, Peter Zametti, and we have a good show for you tonight. Not like last night's show. You know, the person actually showed up tonight. John Malin allegedly will show up tomorrow, too. We'll see. But tonight, on Comic Book Radio, episode 47, I'm going to be talking to Rick Joseph, who's a great letterer. Comic book lettering tonight. A very important subject, something that's near and dear to my heart. You might think like, oh man, this is going to be a snooze fest of a show. Hell no. Hell no. Talking about lettering and graphic design tonight. Good stuff. Good stuff that every single creator out there needs to know, and all the readers out there should know. But before we get started, I want to say hello to those in the chat. We got Paulus Arts. What's up, Paulus Arts? We got Norin Rad here tonight. Jeremy Deal as well. We got Spicer McLeroy here. I love that name, Spicer McLeroy. And Cole King. What's up, Cole King? Hope you're doing good. Let's put up a little bit of a little banner here for the man of the hour. Introducing Mr. Rick Joseph. What's up, Rick Joseph?
Hey, Peter. Hey, everyone.
How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good.
Good.
Is this the first comic stream you ever been on?
Yeah, technically. I've been on one stream before where it was like a release party for a book, and there was a whole bunch of people around. I was around, but not the main focus, so this is pretty much...
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
I got the exclusive here with Rick Joseph.
Yeah, first
interview. Look at that.
Yeah. Oh, live interview.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
That's great. Ara, what's up, Ara? We got Mighty Joe in the chat as well. And I'm looking forward to this. This is one of the shows I've been looking forward to for a while. I've ever since I started doing comic book radio, I'm like, I gotta get Rick on here. I want to talk about lettering.
Oh gosh.
And I'm dead serious. I know that sounds like I might be saying it in a sarcastic way. I'm not. I'm serious.
Yeah, I thought it was a mistake at first when you reached out.
So
like, me? Really?
I've got high expectations here, Rick.
All
can
right.
you meet them, or are you gonna subvert them?
I'll do my best. Let's do it.
Okay.
If not, I'll just BS my way through it.
Well, you could do that too, I guess. Yeah. So I want to start first and foremost with asking you an all-important question. What got you into comic books? What got you into specifically wanting to create comic books?
Comics, it's pretty much the same story as everyone. I had an older brother. They were into comics big time. My older cousin as well. He would buy stacks of books every week, and we'd visit him in Montreal a few times this summer, and he had stacks of everything around. Like, I saw books back then when I was a kid that today, I don't know how much they're worth, but like this, I remember seeing the Superman versus Spider-Man book.
Oh, okay.
One.
Yeah.
And I had it in my hands for a while, and anyway, so he got me into reading comics. He drew out as well. He was an illustrator. So whenever I'd visit him, I'd ask for a picture of, draw me. Remember that he drew me Wayne Gretzky at one point. The last drawings he did for me was Captain America, Iron Man, and Black Panther, all in one setting, and I still have them somewhere. And that pretty much got me into drawing for fun. Like, one day we moved to this new house, and
I forget. I'm sorry, I might have missed it. Around what age were you?
At that time of 8.
Okay.
7 or 8. Yeah. And we moved to a new house, and there was nothing around, no parks, no nothing. So one day I was like, you know what? I'm gonna draw, and I drew his drawings and more stuff down the road, and here I am today. But as far as getting into comics, it was mostly him just showing me what he had in his basement. But what really did it was when Image started in '92. That really got me into. I was panicking for Marvel, like, oh my gosh, they're going down under. I mean, technically they kind of did later on, but what they were doing was pretty. To me, it was great. It was all new stuff, exciting things. At the time, I wasn't really into names. I didn't know who McFarlane was. I knew Spider-Man. I knew he drew that style of Spider-Man, but
Yeah.
that's pretty much the time where I got into the names, or artists especially. That's pretty much it, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very nice. It kind of mirrors my own story. Same thing. A lot of different things happened along the way. Comics were always around in my life, but I did have an older cousin, several that were actually really into comics. And one of my first comics that was given to me that wasn't something my mom just picked up randomly, but my cousin was like, "Oh, hey, go through this box. I'm getting rid of a bunch, And I picked one.
Yeah.
It was like Sleepwalker #5 or something. Spider-Man was on the cover of Sleepwalker.
Right. I know that one.
And yeah. And it was kind of like that. And then the same thing with the Image thing. And the same thing with Marvel, too. I felt the same way that you did at the time. So that's interesting. It's good to know. Now, in terms of you wanting to create comics and make them, especially focusing in a bit on the lettering and graphic design elements, around what time did that occur?
It definitely sparked my interest in when I was in college. So 2002, 2003-ish. That's when I really I'm looking at comics and there was no graphic design in comics. The only person who caught my eye was he did graphic design for Spawn. I think his name was Brent Ash or Ashes or something like that. And Hellspawn, all that. The books, the layouts, the design inside was impeccable. It was great compared to the other stuff. It was just amazing. And no one else was doing great design in comics. Maybe more so nowadays, but back then, nobody. It was just a blank page, names, credits, and that's it.
Comics went through kind of a dark period in the mid 90s to like early 2000s. At least I think so.
It was definitely a new formula. It wasn't just again when Image started. I've never seen credits in the inside back cover before. Sorry, in the inside cover before. It was always either an advertisement, or some promo piece. So that was new to me. But yeah, back then that got me into more of the design. I was really into fonts. Like I create my own fonts, handwriting.
Nice.
At the time, I bought from Comic Craft. They were selling this font off a disc, like a floppy disk, and I bought it. So I had my own pro comic font that I used for my own personal stuff. Essentially, I would just print them out, paste them on the artboard, and that was it. So that was
kind of like
start.
That's like a marriage of traditional and digital lettering. That you're kind of taking that next step to do something like that.
Absolutely, because at the time I had a scanner, I had the fonts. I'm pretty sure I had Photoshop at the time. So, I mean, everything could have been done at once, but it was definitely scan the artwork, or I can't remember the process. It was either scan the artwork with the lettering on it, like taped up, and then scan that again. It was weird back then, but I mean, nowadays you just do it all at once. But yeah, it was definitely a process back then. And in the between time, nothing really transpired. I was drawn a lot before college, and once I graduated, it was mostly like I had to find a job, pay rent, adulting and all that. But I got back into it in 2014 or so. But it wasn't until 2017 I'm like, you know what? I want to try this and be involved in the comic industry, so to speak. As far as drawing, I didn't have the patience or the discipline to be an artist. Like, drawing 10 hours a day never appealed to me, like ever. I'll do 2-3 hours tops.
Yeah, I can't do sequentials for the same thing. I don't have the patience. I don't have the not the stamina, but it's really patience to sit there for that long period of time. Yeah. And I have incredible respect for those that can do it, but it's not as easy. And those that are good at it really make it look way easier than it is.
Yeah, they I don't know how they do it. Every line looks crisp. It looks like it was meant to be there. I remember watching Jim Lee draw live, and I don't know if he was possessed at one point because he's sketching away.
I'm sure he
turns around,
yeah,
and his hand's still moving, and he's not looking at. It's just, I don't know.
You get into that zone, you get into
Yeah.
that creative flow, and then all of a sudden stuff just starts pouring out, but it
Right.
takes thousands of hours to get to that position.
Hmm.
So when it comes to lettering and the graphic design part of things, with your own books especially, around what time did that start, that you're putting it on your own books and you're selling your own stuff, or getting jobs doing lettering with other people's books too?
Yeah, my first lettering gig was in early 2000s, 2020, oh, sorry, 2002 perhaps, early on. But I would say 2017, 2018 is when I really was like, okay, I hit the play button, and I was telling myself, okay, I'm gonna pursue this. It was definitely a slow process. I wasn't that desperate either. I wanted to do it, but I wasn't desperate to do it. So I took baby steps. A job would come in, I would do it the best I could, and then I would get either referrals or and pursue sometimes for gigs. But I was never that desperate for to get work. But definitely, I would say 2018. But the problem was I needed samples, and I didn't have any samples to show. So what I did was I took old short stories that I had from the early 2000s, and I relettered them. And
Smart.
yeah, after I did that, I realized that printing is fairly cheap nowadays. So I went that route. So I printed a few. I had three short stories, so I collected them in a small anthology, and so that was technically my first comic. A whole bunch of old short stories. It was never
Nice.
the intent, but yeah, I relettered them, and I didn't sell that much. I did a pre-sale just to cover the cost of the printing, and I had copies left over. So I pretty much just gave them away. I sold a few, but my intent was not really to sell them. Like, if you want a copy, I would just give it to you. I sold them online as well.
Yeah, it's kind of more like a portfolio for you.
Yeah, yeah. Looking back, I'm not. I don't really use it as a portfolio because you're always progressing, you're always getting
Oh
better.
yeah, yeah.
So
Well, that's
yeah,
the
it's
beauty of it. You get more and more work, and then eventually you don't need to use the older stuff that you were
right,
using
right.
to get.
Not just
Yeah,
that, but it was my art as well. And back in 2002 or so, I thought it was pretty good. I had more energy, more creativity,
yeah.
but some of the drawings weren't really on point. So
So I'm gonna cut right to it now. At this point, I feel like we've gotten to know you enough. At this point, we can start diving deeper into some of these questions. So, in terms of your philosophy when it comes to lettering and everything else, what do you find that you bring to the table as opposed to what you see out there? So what I mean by that is when you see other people's work, especially if you see art where the lettering makes you go, ooh, I wish they hired me.
mhm.
What are you seeing about that lettering, about that work, that is making you kind of cringe and be taken aback, and that you would go in there and do something differently?
Right, I would definitely go in and just polish it some more. I mean, everything's there. The text is there. The balloons are there. What's different is the balloons aren't shaped right. The text aren't aligned right, or maybe the kerning's off, or the line spaces are off. But
And for those
you
that
know,
don't know the technical terms, kerning would be.
kerning is the space between the letters, and yeah, or the leading to the space between the lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be off. The font size. I mean, if I see a comic in Arial or Times, I think that's my breaking point. I lose it. I'll tolerate Comic Sans for that matter, but no, if I see Times or anything that looks like it was done in Word,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I, I should draw the line with that.
Comic Sans does make me cringe a bit, but I get it. They're trying, and it's people that are like, well, it says comic,
Right,
you
right. I mean,
know?
it's unbelievable. You can just search comic fonts online. You'll find a whole bunch of free ones. You could buy them as well, or use the free ones. But some just like the shortcuts and go through the MS Word options and go with Comic
Yeah.
Sans.
Yeah. For you, what's one of the biggest things when you're choosing a font? What kind of thought process goes into your mind with that?
I would say like almost like everybody else, it has to match the artwork. But that being said, I like particular fonts, and personally, I'm not going to some fonts I just won't use because I just don't like them. I don't like the shape, so I just won't use them. And but personally, I have my go-tos, and I find my go-tos, they fit pretty much every style. But otherwise, I'll just go through my collection and make sure I'll just look to see which one fits the best. And that being said, sometimes my go-tos, although I like them, they don't really look right? Or another one would look better with the artwork. So if it's a really cartoony, like let's say like a Garfield type comic, there's certain fonts that I wouldn't use. So yeah, it's definitely trial and error. But again, I have my go-tos. I don't know how many fonts I have, probably several thousands, but I don't go through them all. I narrow it down to maybe 20 to 50 or so, and go through that.
I'm kind of the same way. Anytime I'm like, oh yeah, I think maybe one day I'll use that, and most of the time I don't, but I'm
Never.
like, just in case.
Yeah, you never. I mean, in college I had a CD, and it was like 1,001 fonts. I'm like, oh man, I have to have it, and I had it back then, but I never used it. Out of 1,001,
it's like 950 of them. You're never really gonna use.
Exactly.
We got a good question here in the chat. And what's up, Buddha Bear and Blaze? Cam says the switch to lowercase lettering in the mainstream is the worst development in the history of lettering. It's insufferable. What are your thoughts on the lowercase lettering?
Completely agree. I despise the lowercase. I just don't understand it. That being said, I could tolerate it for captions. If it's, I don't know, this huge caption and you're reading a magic spell, I could tolerate it, but I don't like it. It turns me off. I just, don't want to read the book. It's kind of harsh, but no. I remember tweeting about it a while back. I just don't know. Lowercase does not do it for me. Maybe a children's book, but
there's maybe some books that you can do that with. Yeah. But what really gets me about, and I'm not necessarily a fan of it, especially not for fantasy, sci-fi, more bombastic comics, although most modern comics nowadays tend not to be too bombastic anymore. Right. The thing that gets me a lot of the time about modern comic lettering and just bad lettering in general is when you see like the wall of text and there's no variation. There's no emphasis on any of the words. There's no height difference. There's none of that design. You used to see it on a bunch of the comics back in the day where, you would get the bold italics and this and that and whatever, but you'd also get certain words that were really emphasized, when they would say them. And you don't really see a lot of that in modern comics anymore. I see a lot of just what looks like, to me, when I read it, it's like just deadpan.
Yeah, it's definitely a safe approach. I know some letters do have their own particular style, and they will, exaggerate on certain words or characters. Like you were saying, hey, stop here. The word stop will be humongous, and that's at the discretion of the letterer. I find that it's lacking a lot in, I guess, when the books I work on, I get no directions whatsoever with that kind of stuff. I've started to take liberties where
good.
I'll emphasize a word because most of my clients a lot of them are first-time comic book writers, really independent people. They enjoy comics. Some of them, no, not true. A lot of them know how to write. Like, I get the script and it looks decent. It looks clean. But many times it lacks, just like you were saying, it lacks the bold words, the intonation
punching up the script. Yeah.
Right. What else does it lack? A lot of times, this is one of my pet peeves, along with the lowercase letters, but a transitional scene where all it needs is meanwhile or back then. Just that little, I rarely see it.
To establish that there's a change of pace or a direction or a setting in the story.
If one scene takes place in let's say a warehouse, and the next scene takes place in a museum, in the dark, they look alike. So a lot of times you just don't know, and that's an actual example I've seen in a Kickstarter book I purchased a while back, and it's, I don't know. For me, it's just tough to follow.
When I see stuff like that, and this is all the biggest thing is the result of a lack of a solid editor.
Right.
I just needed that for this sentence. Or it's the result of no editor, and the writer is usually inexperienced, and
Right.
usually, not always, but usually inexperienced, and they're not aware of putting these things in there and going in to make the edits necessary.
Exactly.
So yeah, I love to hear the fact that you're in there with the script and you're not just kind of in copy paste mode and just whatever, but that you're going in there. And I mean, God bless you, because you're paying someone to do the lettering, but they're kind of giving you a little bit of editing on top of it.
Oh, yeah, I do that all the time because, again, most of my clients are fairly, they're indie people. They like comics. It's their first book and whatnot, but they lack that experience. They lack,
Yeah.
like I'll mention that, hey, you need in this scene, all you need is like a meanwhile, because you have the same character in two different scenes, one ending, one beginning, and you don't know if it's one continuous scene or it should stop. And again, I'm working on the book, so I know it stops, but the reader might just might not know what to do. But as top of that, I give feedback all the time on, for instance, a 2-page spread, right, left and right, on a number 2 and a number 3 page, not the number 3 to number 4. Things like that. I'll catch mistakes sometimes in the artwork. I mean, I think everybody does that, where, oh, he's not wearing a chain in this scene, but he was in the other one, or things, So
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it's important. Always remember the odd number is on the left. I mean the even number is on the left, and the odd number is on the right. So you have 2. Well, it's gonna look reversed to you. You get
for
what
me,
I'm
it's
saying.
just 23.
But
2, 3.
yeah, exactly. So it's important to remember that. And then again, these are all you're playing editor with a lot of these books for these people. You're saving their comic book life, because this is stuff that is kind of not part of what you're getting paid to do. And
True,
I've seen
yeah.
a lot of solid letterers go in there and go on autopilot, and they'll do the copy paste, and I'm like, these guys know what they're doing. They're solid, but
Yeah.
they're not reading the script, or they're not going in there and going, this is an emotional scene right now. This is I should maybe put emphasis on this word, or I should kind of detail it so that it plays out like that within the balloons or whatever it may
Right.
be. And like you said, with that thing with the caption, with that transitory thing from one setting to the next, there's been times where I look at the books and I'm like, is there a page missing?
Yeah.
Because it feels weird.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't take much to fix it. Meanwhile, or New York City, or just another location.
Yeah.
A
Or
lot
if
of
it's
times I
somewhere
catch
you
those
referenced
things.
before, back at the whatever,
Yeah, back to the warehouse. Sue's house, whatever. But a lot of things I noticed when I just proofread myself. I proofread my own work to make sure I didn't copy paste the same paragraph twice. One of the last books I did, I noticed that it was a couple talking, and the conversation carried on the next day, but they're wearing the same clothing, and it's something like, "Oh, thanks for the convo we had yesterday," but they're wearing the same clothing. So I mentioned it to the writer, and he fixed it. Otherwise, it's a little awkward. I mean, I don't think anybody would notice or care that much, but I mean, I think most people care more about continuity in comics than they do in movies, and in movies they don't care.
They're going to start caring.
Yeah,
Because all the movies are becoming so interconnected.
absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's one of the worst parts that they've dragged from the comic book, because a comic is so different when it comes to continuity. There's more, at least to me, there was more of an ease of following the continuity within a comic series. And then, of course, they complicated it for themselves, because it would become not just the one series for the character, but then it's like 5 or 6 series for a character. And then there's a crossover thing, and then they're over there and they're doing this, and then there's event style comics,
I think at that point you have to give up. It's
Yeah, and it's turning like that with the movies. It's not a continuity within like the trilogy or the series of the franchise. It turns into like this and that, and then the TV series, and then the other show, and then the thing that's over there on streaming. What a nightmare. I think they're going to lose a lot of people from that. Jenko says, and thank you for the super chat. It says, what does Rick think about giving each individual character their own font slash typography? Is it too distracting? I've seen this technique in David Mazzucchelli's Asterios Polyp and thought it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, to each his own. The writer might request a specific font for, let's say, a demon character. Oh, make this font like evil looking, or in a red word balloon and whatnot. I'm not opposed to it. Personally, I like to keep it simple, where characters like us right now talking, same font. There's no reason to have anything different, unless we're talking in the microphone and you want that buzzing effect. For an animal, a beast, sure. But otherwise, it's not one of my go-tos. I don't, unless it's a monster or something obvious. I would propose to either change the word balloon color or the font itself. But
even the style, sometime too, of the balloon.
Yeah. Or there's one book I was working on. Worked on a long time ago, but I just wrapped up now. There's 2 languages involved, and for the longest time I just didn't know how to do it, because although you're reading an English book, the language in the books are not English. Therefore, we're reading English, but they're not meant to be speaking English. It's like, I don't know, let's say Spanish and Russian. So how do you interpret that? And I asked around, like I did recently. Man, I had no clue what to do, and the answer was a lot simpler than I thought. It was just that have 2 different styles for the word balloons. So for the native language, the typical, rounded shapes, and for the other one, I did the European style where there were squares. Problem solved. Like I couldn't. I spent, not days, but a long time trying to figure that out, and someone recommended that to me, and you know what? Let's roll with it, and I did.
Yeah, I love the old school comic technique, and I have a part in King Cryptid #4 where I did that, where King Cryptid is telepathically talking to Orion the bear, and Orion the bear telepathically says thanks back to him, and I got a little asterisk that goes into an editor's note caption that says translated from bear.
I didn't catch that. I didn't catch that. Well, there you go. Yeah, I do that all the time. Translate it from, I don't know, Russian or Spanish or whatever.
Yeah.
Bear.
I did the work for the reader,
there you
this
go.
way. Yeah. But it's something that you can have fun with. It's usually those simple things. Now, when it comes to what Jenko was talking about, with every character having a different font, I would really have to see specifically, because that could turn into a nightmare, really easily. Yeah. But I do enjoy exactly what you were talking about, where certain characters, especially when they're not human, maybe they have a different style balloon, maybe they have a different font in some way, right, shape, or form, or maybe even certain words they pronounce or say are going to have like either a different font or a different kind of text to it to emphasize how they would be saying certain words.
Right.
And that all helps, because when we boil it down, we're talking about the art of comic book lettering, but the art of comic book lettering is technically the visual aid for what the writing is. So that's right, what that is. It's not necessarily just the lettering. That's the writing as an art form. So
right,
you really got to make sure you translate that across.
Right.
Cam says, I've never been a fan of Thor's ornate font. That's been used a lot this century. How do you feel about that?
I find it funny because I don't know. I feel like they know me very well. I don't like it. I don't like it either. It's like the old school, I don't know, Victorian or Shakespearean fonts. It's a little harder to read, like an Unsol or something like that.
I think the font's
cool.
like Ale and Wenches or something is what the font's called, something like that.
Is it?
But
it's. I mean, I'm not mad at it, but I'd prefer not to see that.
Yeah, that's
super negative.
Well, I mean, that's a case too where I think if you use something like that sparingly in some way, and you could probably work it in, or if it's something that's being emphasized by one character, or even exactly, But when it turns into, it starts to become a chore, I find, to read the whole book when it's when it's like that, when it's kind of an overly designed font. You know, you really want to have something simple. Same thing with the balloon. Something that really upset me a while ago, and those in the chat might know what it is. You ever see the comic, or there's been comics out there that have put red lettering on a black balloon? So you got red on black.
The thing is, you need to, it looks great on screen though, but
printed, it's like, oh man.
Which one was it?
You want to name names? We'll name names. We'll name names.
Yeah,
you
what
want
book
to name
was it?
names?
I'm just trying to.
It's the Batman Who Laughs, or whatever that is.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's right. It's just not. It's not easy to read. I mean, I don't mind the red text on a black background, but again, maybe 1 word, 2 words tops. But the whole book or the whole dialogue like that, it's hard to digest. It's because you have to keep it up. You have to, like, I don't want to read that. I might read it digitally because I can zoom in.
Especially when it's like that thin font that they had going on, because then they're playing with the font too. So then you have this like thin, wispy-ish font to get the voice, and then it's like, ooh, that's like
the black background, red text, and a weird-looking font. So I don't know. It's a trifecta of failure. I wouldn't recommend it.
And they easily could have done something where if they had the black text on a red balloon, then you could read it nice and easy, and kind of get your point across. But yeah, that was like, I first time I saw that, I was like, okay.
But in situations like those, I wonder if it's the writer's call, or, if someone insists.
Yeah, I wonder whose call that was.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I made a similar observation for something, and the writer was like, "No, it's cool. It's all right." Like, all right. I said what I had to say, and it's up to them ultimately. But I think they should have changed what I had recommended. Yeah, it's not an ego thing. It's just that, man, it's tough to read.
Trust in the expertise of those you hire.
Right. So that was I took it, but like whatever, I just moved on.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're like, okay, no one's gonna really read what the hell this is, but all right.
Yeah.
Because with lettering, you really want to make sure that you're playing up the contrast. I mean, that's important just in art in general. You want to really make sure you're playing up the contrast correctly. It draws the eye to where you want it to go, and it makes it easily translated in terms of the image and how to read it, the readability of the image. And then when it comes to lettering, that's the whole point. The whole point is making sure that it's legible, readable, and not even noticeable. So that's the sad part. And we're gonna take a quick break right here, and then we're gonna talk about, for a short time, the saddest part about being a really good letterer. So we'll get right back. You're watching Comic Book Radio. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti. My guest tonight is Rick Joseph. We're talking about lettering on episode 47. We'll be right back in just a minute or two. We've got some nice trailers to show you guys. Stay right there.
You speak as though I have conquered death. I live death every day. I am surrounded by it, smothered by it. Look at you now. He would have everlasting life. You seek to defy death, yet you cannot even defy sleep. And our like sleep is to death. It is a painted death.
Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
All right, welcome back to Comic Book Radio. I'm here with my guest, Rick Joseph. Now, the saddest part about being a really good letterer, you know what that is, Rick?
The saddest part? I'm pretty easygoing, but I know a lot of people are complaining about credits, giving props to the letterer. No one cares about the letter really. It's an afterthought. My name should be on the cover. Whatever. Trying to think, what's the saddest part aside from that?
The saddest part is when you're really good at lettering, no one notices. When you're really bad,
right.
everyone
Yeah,
notices.
Right. That's a good point. I've heard that one before, but yeah, that's right. I forgot about it. Yeah.
Then you start going, who the hell did this horrible letter? And you look for the credits for the letterer. But when it's really good, most people are just like, oh, it's good. That's what I'm used to. It's fine. It's good.
Yeah. Good point.
So that's you're an unsung hero of the comic. And yeah, there are credit issues that can be given, I guess. But I think in modern times that's kind of changing a bit in terms of credits and whatnot. Although all of my older comics have credits for the letterer. So if someone's out there and you're not even crediting everybody that worked on the comic, that's kind of a thing of a bygone era.
Yeah. But I've heard a lot of feedback on, let's say there's a comic review of a specific book, and of course they'll mention the the writer, the artist, colorist, sometimes the letterer.
Oh yeah,
I'll get really upset about that. I understand the frustration. Like, hey, I worked on the book too, but for the most part, I know the writer and artist, they have this relationship in the book, so I understand that. Listen, I didn't spend hours slaving over a drafting table doing artwork. So, you know what? I'm modest. I'll just take the back seat, and I'll take the credit in the page.
You should still get credit on a review.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking at you, person out there who doesn't give credit to the letterer or whoever else on the book.
Yeah.
I don't know who it is, but don't do that. But yeah, so that's the part that sucks. That's the part that is frustrating, I think. But you just kind of go and you carry on and you keep doing a good job. Now, for you, being I'll say you're an experienced letterer. For those that don't know any of Rick's lettering, it's literally on the thumbnail. You can see the thumbnail there. He's placed his lettering services. They're available. You can hire Rick for your book, and you should. If you're looking for a letterer, hire Rick. And don't do the whole like, oh man, like I'm gonna save like $200 or something on my book, and it's gonna look like garbage. Hire a qualified letterer like Rick, or just hire Rick, and make sure that all the money you paid, all the time you put into your book, all of that, with the art, with the writing, with the story, everything, that then the cherry on top is good lettering. If you all of a sudden have horrible lettering on that book, oh my Lord, everything you did, all the wonderful art, all the great writing, all the hours and the dollars spent, wasted. And I think in the chat you guys can agree that there's a lot of times you'll and this is why I don't back crowdfunded books anymore unless they have lettering on at least one sample page, because I've backed a couple where I was like, oh, beautiful art, oh, I like that writer, and then the lettering comes in, I'm like, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
So for you, if someone's out there in the chat or whatever it may be, and they want to get into lettering, what are some of the things you recommend that they do in terms of not just the programs maybe they want to use and what they want to look into and maybe study? And I know this might be a big question, but also in terms of what you did to learn the things you learned.
Right. Well, very early on, I actually had an interest in that. Like, I really enjoyed the lettering. I had a fascination with fonts, of all things. I just love fonts. And early on, it was, Comic Craft had a whole bunch of fonts available for sale. and of course I couldn't buy them because they were too expensive at the time. So I would scan them and create my own. I remember I have somewhere on a CD a J-Lee
Oh, okay.
font,
Yeah.
like a Hell Shock font that I scanned and reproduced. So it's a bootleg, but it's horrible. It's really jaggedy and all that. But I started that way, just trying to letter my own things. But the proper route to, I would say, first of all, if you really want to do comic lettering, off the bat, it means you have a genuine interest in it. Therefore, I assume they read comics, they buy comics, they know what a page looks like. They would know about composition. They would know about typography. As far as the steps I took, again, I had an interest early on, but when I really wanted to pursue this, I took a course on lynda.com. It's about comic book lettering by John Rochelle of am I pronouncing his name now? John Rochelle, Comic Craft, and it's maybe a 5-7 chapter lesson, all video, and I took that, and a lot of things I knew already, but like everything, everybody knows a lot, and when you take a video like that or a course, it just fills in the gaps and it makes your process much more complete. And I took that. I practiced on my own artwork. What else? A lot of things you learn on the job, like trapping. No one knows about trapping off when you do lettering, or what's the other word for it? Overlay? No. I can't recall what the term is, but in Illustrator, it's just a click of a button and it does it for you. There's a lot of tutorials online.
That's when you have the balloon and then the text kind of falls within it, isn't it? And it kind of lines up within.
Right, and because with the printing process, you print every color one by one, the 4 color, the CMYK, and it's something you do to enable the hard to explain. In case there's movement, right? If there's movement, you don't want your let's say your white word balloon to shift where you see the white over the frame. It's hard to explain off that, but if you
look it up.
Holler at me. Look it up. That's right.
I'm not going to do tutorials for you on this show, guys. There's plenty of really good ones out there. Speaking of which, do you do any tutorials, anything like that? Do you have like a YouTube channel or on your site? Do you do anything? No.
None of that. No, I'm not.
You're not giving away your secrets.
I was talking to at a con to a writer, and we were talking about this other letterer that we both know of, and I was telling that I don't share my secrets. I just don't know. I'll tell you what font I use, how I did it, but there's something about I'm just selfish like that. I just don't feel the need to share all my.
You want it? Hire me.
Right. I like some people do tutorials. I don't know. You're just divulging all your secrets, and
when you get big enough, Rick.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps, but there's a lot of resources online. Blambot does on his site. He has a few things like I forget how he calls it, but essentially, what you should or should not do.
Yeah, there's a pretty good guide on that site to reference.
Oh, on top of that, he wrote a book too on comic book lettering, or you can buy the book and read that.
Yeah,
that's a good resource as well.
What are some of the most? I'm guessing sometimes you get hired onto a book and someone's already lettered it, and you got to go in there and re-letter it. Mm-hmm. So in that instance, or just even in instances you've seen when you've purchased other books, or you've seen samples shown, or you've seen a preview page or whatever, what are some of the biggest things that you see that and you're like, ooh, that's sticking out to me, some of the stuff that should be corrected?
Oh, definitely the font size, if it's way too small.
That's such a thing. Is that a digital era thing, you think, that they're zooming in too much? I noticed that too.
Or, some fonts, for instance, a Comic Craft font, for me, I think the ideal size would be like 6.5 to 7, and a Blambot would be, I believe, 9. So if you're working with, let's say, Comic Craft usually, and then you get a Blambot, and the 9 shifts to 6 or 7. The font size are different, so you can't really use the same size for both font families. You have to eyeball it or know that the letter I has to be I don't know, 6 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch or something like that.
I always print it out. I always print out to size exactly what's going to end up printing, and that's how I gauge
just
it.
compare.
Yeah. Either that or sometimes digitally I'll take something I know I've printed before and that this was perfect and then just kind of superimpose. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I do the same thing too where, there's a font I really like and I noticed this book has it. I'll do the same thing, see what size they use, and it's close enough. Therefore, I'm good with instead of having a 6.8 font, I'll just round it up to 7. That way I could have the leading at
6.8.
7.
That's like, yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's small for any other font, but for, let's say, Comic Craft, it's ideal.
No, I mean like the 6.8, and just make it 7. Like the 0.2 is that really gonna make or break that? I mean,
I'm guilty of that at times. Like, you know what? Between 6 or 7, let's go straight into
masochist.
6.5. It works though.
You're going into the points. 6.5. So I get it. Because there is something noticeable, but like 0.8, it's like that 0.9, and then maybe pushing it up to 7. It's a little too much.
That being said, the 0.8 I usually gauge for 0.2s. So 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8.
Man, oh man, look at that! Look at that! Yeah. You're getting the nitty gritty there.
Oh gosh, yeah. It's the font obsession, really. It's like no one cares, but
Yeah, I agree. Cam, you got really good points tonight. It says aspiring letters should look back and study phenomenal letterers like Tom Orzechowski and John Workman. These guys were really the blueprint. Yeah, Orzechowski with Uncanny X-Men was always great. Especially, what a masterful way to fit in all of Claremont's script. Which, there'd be a lot of... Claremont wrote those books, you're like, wow, this comic, nowadays a comic you finish in 5 to 10 minutes, and his is like, okay, I got to put this down and finish it tomorrow. It's going to take me 3 hours to read this thing, True. And he managed to fit in that lettering, and it was just seamless.
Yeah.
And then, Workman's great, too. Yeah.
All hand lettered.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But, so what are some of the other things you see that are just glaring... red flags for you on lettering, or that you would tell other aspiring letters out there, or even letterers who are currently doing what they're doing? Because I see a ton of people who've been lettering for years, and they'll constantly do these same mistakes. But I wonder what your red flags are.
Well, for me personally, everybody has that, their own style, their own ways of doing things. Personally, for me, it's just I don't like to overdo it with the sound effects. I don't mind a bing or a poing here and there, but sound effects in moderation. Again, I don't mind the explosions. Personally, I like to keep the sound effects to, if it's something organic, like, well, not organic, I'd say compare a gunshot would be a specific type of font compared to an explosion. They'll be different. So anything organic, like a punch or something landing on the ground, could be another type of font or style. I'm just trying to think what I don't know. I guess I'm more open to other people's style. I'm not bothered that much. One thing I guess add to the pet peeve list is a few years ago I noticed a style that was recurring in comics where the balloons were incredibly roundish, like literally a circle. Okay, fine. But the tail drove me nuts. It was just like a line, like a swirly spaghetti line.
Yeah, the squiggle weird line, and
no. Homie, don't play that. I just can't. I can't.
Horrible.
But again, it fit that's what the letterer wanted to do, fine.
Yeah, it's stupid as hell, but yeah, okay, that's what you want
Right.
to do.
I mean, me personally, I don't, I don't feel I need to
It's
chase.
ugly.
I just can't. Yeah,
I feel like that's like a letterer with an ego that's in there. And it's like, you know what, artist? Guess who I got the thing now. I'm making
Yeah.
little squiggles all over your art. That's what that feels like, because it feels like a little kid that goes in there and just starts,
oh god,
the coloring book. You stay inside the lines, my ass. I'm gonna start just making squiggles all over this thing, and that's what it looked like so much of the time. I'm like, what is this? What are you doing?
but,
You're supposed to integrate seamlessly within the art.
yeah. It's just a style that I don't know. I saw it in a few books. I call it the spaghetti
Yeah.
tail. It literally looks like a squiggly spaghetti line for the word balloon. Wasn't a fan of that.
No.
What else? Lowercase. Squigglies.
It's an abomination.
But again, some people love it. Some letterers,
Sickies.
but it's up to them. Me personally, I don't find I like to keep things somewhat traditional, where I don't try to reinvent the wheel. I don't need to try to come up with this new innovative word balloon that will captivate. I mean, if it comes up, fine, but I won't lose sleep over it.
Yeah. Well, what I mean too by some of the red flags also, and Mighty Joe, I'll get to your question in just 1 second. That's a good question too. Is that I find things on lettering where the balloon. I mean, first of all, you could tell when they're going in there into Photoshop and they're kind of just constantly stamping the thing that is already a word balloon.
Right.
And it'll be like, my head's here, but here's the word balloon, right? But then the tail points down. It's not pointing in my mouth. It's just constantly it's just pointing wherever the Photoshop thing told it to point.
Right.
That drives me nuts. That's horrible. So it's all these different things where I'm seeing how it's utilized, and it's not someone who's, because I get it. There's times when you're an amateur letterer, you're just starting off, and maybe you are trying to do more than you really should. That's kind of like the hallmark of an amateur anything. You're overcompensating. And I've been there. I did that, early on and everything. And then eventually you learn, just what are you doing? It's like people have been doing this way better than you for way longer. Learn.
Right.
Don't, like you said, don't reinvent the wheel or nothing. It's fine. But it's stuff like that. And then there's things within the way that certain word balloons are concocted. Like they'll be like a hot dog. It's just like this whole big, weird, long, stretchy thing, and it's just like this massive, long.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you don't have a choice because the artwork is too condensed in the panel. Like I remember one of the books I worked on last. One of the drawbacks too with a lot of indie comics or indie creators is either the writer's fairly new, the artist could be established, or sometimes they're new as well. But I feel they might pay less attention to the script in a sense where, if this panel is very word heavy, I feel they should keep that in consideration when illustrating the panel. And many times I would have a panel where it's tiny, but we're looking at least like 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know, 50 to 60 words. It just doesn't fit, so you have to innovate and borrow space from the previous panel and have arrows and connectors and all that. It definitely happens. I mean, once in a while you have to break those rules where you'll have that long hot dog panel because
break up the text as best as
Definitely.
you can, and then writers, for the love of all that's holy, when they're ending a sentence and it's like, oh, a nice 5-syllable word.
Oh yeah, that's the worst.
To end that sentence. That's great.
I'm gonna hyphenate that.
It's like, all right, you asked for it.
Yeah.
Here comes the hyphen.
Hyphen. Enter.
Hyphen ing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that happens quite a bit. But that's what I love about lettering my own writing.
Mm-hmm.
Is I get to go in there and I just get to make it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Right.
You get it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mighty Joe says, before or after finished art? Is there a preference? So lettering before or after?
The artwork? Oh, after, like when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
Sometimes it won't be colored, but for the most part, I get artwork colored, and I just go in and do my thing, unless the comic is black and white. But yeah, after.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Spicer says Attack on Titan's lettering infuriates me at times. Manga lettering in general infuriates me most of the time. That's my biggest pet peeve about manga.
Manga, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of really bad lettering in manga.
See, I'm not
Or,
into
well,
that.
our manga version, not the Japanese.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
My son's into manga, and I just, again, I try, but I just don't. I don't care. I don't care for manga at all. I have one actually here that I borrowed from him just for reference.
I'd
Yeah,
actually probably
one of
like,
these.
yeah. I'd probably actually like manga without with the just Japanese, like the straight up, because I dig some of the art and I could look at that and follow the story, you know. But in terms of a lot of the writing,
Obviously,
yeah, a lot of the writing, the translation or whatever it may be, and then the lettering that's in there, it just seems like such a rush job, and I really can't get into. I'm just like, what is this?
yeah.
But the art a lot of the time, I'm like, oh, it's pretty good.
It is great. It's great art, but I don't know. I just
Yeah.
want to flip the book the North American way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I don't want to have to relearn how to read.
I'm a diva like that. I want to the North American way.
Yeah. This is crazy.
Yeah. But I don't know, kids love them. So.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do. Thanks, comic industry. You guys did that. When they were
gosh.
doing that whole thing for like 20 something years of like, hey, you know, you can't, the kids they're playing the video games and this and that, and they don't want to read comics anymore. You know, so let's not
yeah.
really make comics for kids anymore, and then not specifically, but let's not even make them accessible really for kids anymore.
Right.
You know, and then it
It's
turns
funny
into
because
well,
I have comics around all the time, and no one really cares that much. Maybe because dad's just reading comics and they rather use the manga. But I think it has to do with when I was a kid. I'd watch the cartoons, and I think the cartoons led me to comics. And I think the same with them. They probably watched the
anime, yeah.
animes, and then they want the manga. So it's pretty much the same transition from when I was a kid compared to them. It's just a different type of book.
Yeah, that's something too that I think is getting lost in translation by the emphasis on live action films. You know.
Yeah, definitely. Like my kids, they know all the characters. When they were younger, I remember it's like, "Oh, that's Wolverine." And I'm like, "How do you know Wolverine?" I never mentioned Wolverine. How do you know Wolverine? And I believe it was from probably a video game, or I don't know, maybe something they saw somewhere else. But they knew Wolverine before as whatever it was, but not the comic book character. So, I'm okay with that, but I was just surprised to
Yeah.
how that came about.
For me as a kid, it was the trifecta of obviously the comics are there, but then you get the animated shows, which were really good, especially in the 90s. They were top notch. And then the trading cards, especially. The trading cards that incorporated the whole universe. So this way I could always, get a pack of trading cards and learn about characters and then go, oh, that character sounds awesome. I got to go find some of their comics at the shop.
Right.
So it was like this whole thing of just being bombarded with it in this complete kind of way that was so immersive.
Right. And on top of that, they would tell you on the card that, this character appeared for the first time in this comic. So like, oh, let me just try to get the first appearance of whoever. But one thing I like too, they advertised the cards in the comics. So that was like...
Yeah, that iconic ad with all the different hands and stuff.
The hands,
the
yeah,
Marvel
yeah,
series
yeah,
too.
yeah.
That was great,
Yeah, I used to buy those as well. I never had the whole collection. I just, I don't know, maybe a third of the collection. I got into other cards too. I'd buy like fantasy cards, like Frazetta cards.
Oh yeah.
Just because I like the artwork and I couldn't find it anywhere else, right? So I like a specific picture. I had like the miniature, 3x2 card or whatever the dimensions are. And,
yeah,
that was
2.5
pretty much it.
by 3.5. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So before I let you go, what are you working on right now of your own, or maybe even if you can discuss it, some of the books that you've lettered, so people can go check those out too.
Right.
But more specifically about your own stuff, because I also know you're an artist too. On top
Right.
of it,
Yeah, my own stuff. Right now, at the moment, not much. Actually, not at all. Last year, I kind of took a dip. I didn't draw that much. Just personally, I didn't feel like it. It was in a bad zone. Slowly but surely, I'm slowly getting into it. People reached out for me to draw covers. So I think it was in February, I illustrated my first comic cover for one of my clients. He reached out like, "Listen, you want to do a cover?" I thought it was a variant cover at first, but like, no, it's the main cover. So I did that, and that kind of got me my juice flowing again. So got me drawing some more. And another client, I did an illustration for him sometime last year, but it finally got published a few months, maybe a month ago. So that's cool to see. I just saw it online. I don't have a copy yet. So technically, I have 3 covers in the span of a few months. Otherwise, in 2019, 2020, and 2021, I did the Inktober challenge. And that was really fun. So kind of stressful as well, but it was fun. And out of that, I created a small art book for each. So this year, we're in August. I have 2 months to think about it. I might do it again. I might try it again this year. If not, I'll just do something else. Otherwise, right now, I do have. Just before we started this conversation, someone reached out to me for to letter their ash can.
nice.
So that was literally before we got into this, chatting back and forth with a person. I think it's an 8-pager. And I do have, where is it? Another client reached out this week to letter this 24-page story they have. It's I think it's based off their video game, so I'm doing that. Otherwise, yeah, I'm just keeping busy. I do have a day job, so I do that, take care of the kids and whatnot. And in the meantime, I just either early in the morning, between meetings, or in the evenings, I just do the lettering thing. And that's pretty much it. As far as art, eventually I'd love to, fingers crossed, I say this every year, I'd love to create my own comic if I can. Just, I need a story, I need something short and sweet. But we'll see. If anything, maybe a short story, just to say that I did something. I know I don't have the stamina for sequential, but I would like to give it a shot at one point. Just something short and sweet. And
Very nice, man.
that. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, just
Does it seem like the lettering work is picking up for you too? It sounds like it.
yeah. There was a dip in this summer. July was incredibly quiet, but it's picking up again. I think literally an hour before we started talking.
All right.
But it's an okay pace. I don't want to be
I'm not going to
overwhelmed.
take credit for that, but
Yeah, they knew I was coming or something. Oh, maybe it was. Yeah, maybe it was Twitter. I don't know. But yeah, I don't want to be too overwhelmed because I do really enjoy it, and I want to give the time needed to every project. Although I'm not an editor, but sometimes I do put that. It's not even an editor's hat. It's just you see things as you're working on a project, and you just you mention it to the creators, like, hey, this is off. Is this intentional? No. Yes. That's okay. Let's move on.
no, it's good that you do that. I find that there's a lot of letterers out there that don't, and and I've even had creators at Alterna where I'm like, didn't why is it just there's no emphasis on anything? Why is there these massive walls of text? What's going on here? Is no one catching this along the way? Because to me, it's like you're all part of the team, and everyone's job on the team is not just to make yourself look good, but to make each other look good too,
Right.
and make the story great for the reader. And if everyone's just kind of going in there and I just gotta get this done as fast as I can, if that's the mentality, it's going to look
Right.
like that, So everybody should be there covering each other's back.
Right, but a lot of these letters, they sometimes they're full-time gigs, so they need to move fast, and I get that. They just move on.
You're so pragmatic, Rick.
Right. For me, on the other hand,
Is it the
I do-
Canadian part of you?
You know what? It could. I was talking to a former colleague of mine, and she was saying that
Sweet guy.
she was saying, "Yo, you're too zen. You're just you're the most zen person I ever ever met. Like,
People have called me
you and
like
my
Saint
husband.
Peter, and I'm so nice and this and that. You're making me look like the biggest a-hole in comics because you're so sweet and pragmatic.
But I'm just saying that because I've experienced it. I've heard comments too that they need me to move on, and that's it. But at least with me or other
Yeah.
people in my shoes, we could spend the extra time with the client and just make the page not even perfect, but make it the way we usually do. But I'm not opposed to coming back and for revisions. To me, revisions is part of the game in pretty much every industry. But there are limits, of course. I mean, sometimes you're like, okay, I could just take the script back and let me know when you're ready, and then we'll do the rest of the revisions. But definitely, yeah. And just going back to the wall of text. On one hand, it could be the writer, and two, either the letter doesn't care or just they got the memo. This is what I have to do it, and done. So it's hard to put the blame on. Well, for me, it's hard to put the blame on anybody.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I just see it that the writer wrote it that way, and it's in the script. It's my directions.
Then
the
I see
directions,
it, and I'm like, what the is going on
Yeah,
on
yeah.
this page?
Yeah. Exactly.
Do I need to take my eyes out and give them to you, and then you see what's happening on the page there? You can't see
Yeah.
what you're doing. Like, I've had lettering come through sometime from very capable people, very talented people, and and sometimes they're lettering their own book, and they're going in and they're blocking up all important parts of art and putting it here and there. Meanwhile, there's perfect negative space here and there that would lead the eye even better throughout the
Yeah,
panel. And I'm like, and I do it for them, and I cut it up and I put it out, and I'm like, this is how this should flow. And they're like, I don't really care if the lettering blocks up a lot of my art. And I'm like, what?
All right, that's
I'm like, who's gonna care besides me? The reader's gonna care.
the reader.
The
Yeah.
reader's gonna care.
Where's his face behind this balloon?
Holy cow!
It happens.
But
Not
God bless
always.
you, Rick, for being so sweet and pragmatic and nice and easygoing. And because then when someone like me comes along and I'm a little bit particular, if I was to hire you, you'd be wonderful to work with, And then I also
probably.
know that you've got my back in case I don't manage to catch something. So it's a perfect combination of the two things that need to occur. But yeah, I do find that happens a lot where people
I
just
find
seem.
it could be the maybe the graphic design background. 'Cause a lot of times you'll spot a mistake, and just not to touch it.
Yeah.
You'll circle it, let them know, but don't touch it. In comics, again, I don't work for any of the huge publishers, so I take liberties. And you know what? Yeah, I'll change it. I'll take some liberties, like for instance, there's certain typography rules in lettering where you should follow. Everybody knows the I, the
You think
I
that.
am and all that.
So the crossbar I is what he's
crossbar,
talking
yeah.
about, where the personal pronoun should have a crossbar if available, and you
Right.
shouldn't put the crossbar willy-nilly
Exactly.
throughout the rest of it.
It's not just the uppercase I; it's the non-crossbar and all that.
And that's a
That's on-
kerning issue largely.
That's on me, right? It's on the letter to do that. You won't see that in the script. But other things like, oh gosh, sometimes okay, this is the biggest thing where it depends on the writer, but when someone says something and they get cut off, many times you could either have the double dash or the ellipses. It's either one or the other, so you can't just change them whenever you want. It has to be consistent, and that's something that I'll spot. Like, okay, we used the double dash before, so we should use it again, unless it's a trailing thought. So things like that I'll catch, but it won't make or break the comic really.
if they did, Cam, they'd be the letterer.
But that's a good point, yeah, because many times they know how to tell a story, but they might not know all the rules. Like I tried to
the
avoid
language of comics.
colons or semicolons in a comic. I've seen it a few times, but I'm like, should we use them? Even
It's
to that, I'm
usually
like,
not. Yeah, it's usually not used.
right.
But yeah,
So
yeah.
there you have it.
Well, good on you, Rick. Let's see.
Thank you.
NXerd asks, this is before we wrap up. Says I guess before you go. Says if you could recap what makes a letterer essential in the age of AI and downloadable fonts, what is the sauce that only the letterer can bring?
Yeah, I don't see AI interfering with comic book lettering.
That would
I've
be
never tried it, but I
interesting.
don't see it being an obstacle at all. Downloadable fonts. For someone like myself who likes fonts, like I try to respect the licensing most as I can. I do buy them, and I use the fonts that I buy. If you download a free font, make sure the license is what's the terminology they use? Open for like real projects, not just for fun. I mean, again, unless you're working on a project that will appear on TV or for one of the big companies, I wouldn't worry about it. Otherwise, I would worry about it. Like if I'm working for something, for a Hollywood movie or whatever, I'll make sure that my fonts are legit. I'll buy them if I have to.
They all
If they're-
kind of specify terms on that level.
Exactly. Yeah. But I don't see AI being an issue. Downloadable fonts. I mean, as long as they're comic fonts, I'm okay with it. For sound effects and other things of that matter, you could improvise and use whatever fonts you find on, I don't know, the fonts or the equivalent of thefonts.com. Yeah, I don't see it having any negative. It does help to know lettering, like know what you're doing. It's not just placing words here and there. I mean, it kind of is, but you really need to know, like, have that
Spatial
flow.
relations, tangential lines.
Right.
Yeah.
And how to problem solve too. Like, a tiny panel with two people in it and 80 words. How do you, and they go back and forth. The worst is, if someone starts a speech and the character's on the right hand side, that's just like, oh gosh, I prefer, well, I guess we all prefer the character on the left hand side to speak first, and then just,
It's like, say goodbye to this panel.
yeah, I'm gonna work overtime on this one.
And that's
happens.
exactly why when I give, I don't know if you did purchase the story script of King Cryptid, but that's exactly why when I wrote the story script for the artist that I left it open to interpretation for them and just described scenes, as opposed to giving them my dialogue and my captions and doing a more technical script. So I knew that I would go in there, and it's you can't do this when you're necessarily hiring a letterer. You have to then create a second script for that letterer after you receive that finalized art. But I would go in there afterwards as a writer and kind of retroscript what I have already in my mind, and then utilizing the art that they've put out. So if they do have certain characters in certain positions, and they don't ever have to be encumbered by my script, I could go in there and utilize the placements accurately. It doesn't have to be like, well, how do I figure out now to make this guy speak about this and that,
Right.
So yeah, it's easier to do it like that for me, being the writer
Let me
and
ask
the
you this.
letterer. But for you,
When you write in that approach, when you take that approach, do you find that the story's the same when it's all said and done? Like what's in your mind beforehand and when it's all said and done?
I'd say it's roughly 80%.
Oh, yeah.
What I would imagine, and that's fun for me, believe it or not.
Okay.
So I see step by step and improve the process of thumbnails to pencils to inks to finalize, colors if there's colors on it, and then I go in there as the writer, and as I'm seeing finalized pages come through, like there were a couple pages in particular that happened with King Cryptid 1 to 4, where the way the art was getting laid out was giving me all kinds of different ideas for pacing and what I would put in there as I would write it that I didn't have previously.
Right.
So it makes me more creative on that level, so I can actually go in there and utilize captions, thought balloons, dialogue, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's about 80% to what I would have envisioned originally. But that last 20% is so much fun because I get to be creative again. And then because I don't know exactly what the artist is going to do in terms of how they're lining up certain things, so it's
Right.
a truly fun process. I enjoy it, but it's nothing that I would recommend necessarily for someone just starting out. You got to work with people who know what they're doing, and then you have to know what you're doing too.
Right.
Let's see here. Eric says, after reading enough comics with bad lettering, you really appreciate a good letterer. A good letterer paves the road of the reader's experience. I agree.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
there
It
was
makes you
one
want to read
other.
the comic, not just skim through it.
Yeah, absolutely. thought there was one other thing, but okay. I guess the thing I'll end this with is, and I mentioned it just now for a couple seconds. What are your thoughts on thought balloons?
On thought balloons, yeah, you don't see them much nowadays.
What a shame.
I don't. Yeah.
Ignore my bias.
I mean, I don't mind the thought balloons. 'Cause the thing is, in the old school comics, I guess, because I had this conversation with somebody, like, when I think of something, I'm not having really dialogues in my head. I might have a dialogue when, let's say, someone comes in the room, and I'm thinking, what are they wearing? And that thought will actually resonate in my head. So to me, that is a good use of a thought balloon. But when they use a thought balloon for, or a thought bubble for, like to replace a narration or for exhibition or whatever it is, it gets kind of heavy. But no, I've used thought bubbles or balloons, whatever, in recent comics, but they're all short and sweet. I don't remember them being. No, actually, yeah, there is one comic. The thing is, I don't really enjoy creating them because they're a pain to align and to create, because you can't just blow them up, right? Because you want the
yeah, you want the trail, and you want kind of that emphasis that it's
to be consistent, right? And
yeah.
if you just stretch it, shift and stretch, it'll be wider, so you have to redo it. So it tends to be a pain at times, but no, I don't mind the thought balloons as long as it's like short and sweet, just like a thought, not necessarily a monologue or in their heads or something like that. But yeah, they took that away of, I don't know, in the mid 2010, 12ish. I can't even recall when it went away.
Yeah, it seems like it was a transition from sometime in the late 90s to the 2010s or so.
Okay, there you
like
go.
They slowly,
But,
yeah.
Because yeah, it was replaced with the caption, and I don't mind the caption either. It's a cleaner and quicker way to, convey. I guess it would be the character's narration or extended thought as opposed to a reactive thought. But yeah, I'm not opposed to them. I enjoy them once in a while.
Yeah. I love giving insight into the character and how they're feeling about something that may be contradictory to how they're behaving. And I love the idea of thought balloons being used so you can this is something that doesn't happen a lot in comics, even though it infuriates me. You have a scene where the character should be quiet, should shut the hell up, and they're talking out loud. They're snooping around.
Too, right?
They're supposed to be quiet. And they've got the speech, and I'm like, what? You're supposed to be quiet. Why are you talking?
And that's a good point too. A lot of times, let's say something happens, you're like, what the? I wouldn't say that if I'm alone. I would just, react and look. So that would be a good spot for a thought balloon. What the? As opposed to saying it, because I've never said what the when I'm alone, or
yeah.
Something crashes in the backyard and you're like, hey, what's that noise? I'm not going to say that out loud. I will just think it, or not even think it. I'll just look out the window. And
like they don't have, the characters have no internal monologue, right?
Yeah.
That to me is kind of strange, because it makes you feel closer to the character when you see these characters that do. Obviously, like anything else, you don't want to overuse it to the point that it becomes this redundant crutch. But there's absolutely moments when it should be needed, and people go, well, they replaced it with captions and things like that, and I go, yeah, how awful, because the caption is something else entirely. So yeah, I love seeing the thought balloons. I loved getting into comics, and you would get insight into the character and what they were thinking, and then
with Spider-Man especially. I think Spider-Man was one of the comics. The only comics I knew that was just that all the time.
Yeah, and it would be like, here's this cocky son of a gun or whatever, he's joking, making fun of the villain or whatever. Meanwhile, on the inside, he's worried.
Yeah.
And that kind of a thing. So it gave you more clue into the character and their personality, and to kind of cut short the character's ability to do that. I feel like it really just it kept the characters at a distance, and I feel like the reader needs to be closer to the character to really get what's going on. So yeah, but that's interesting that I mean, like you said, most comics nowadays don't do that, and it kind of was like a phasing out, and it's a shame. It's a shame. I'm bringing it back. I don't care. I'm doing it in my comics.
But the captions as well. You know, like I remember reading comics where you'd have a caption, something like, as the sun rises from the east, this guy decided, just some random.
Get some poetic language in there, some storytelling.
And I didn't mind that. I'm like, I don't see that anywhere nowadays. Again, it doesn't have to be throughout. I can't stand narration, like, as he opened the door, none of that. But just some random,
Yeah, that kind of redundancy, that's annoying with the captions. But yeah, poetic language and storytelling and setting up a scene and kind of, being that voice within the story propelling the story forward. I really enjoy that and miss that a lot from comics. There's not a whole hell of a lot of that.
Or, last thing is the roll calls. I'm horrible with faces, right? If I see two blondes, it's the same person. I'm just horrible with faces. So and names. Therefore, just have just a roll call. Like, in the X-Men, you'd see Cyclops, Scott Summers, leader of. That's it. That's all I need. Just a name with.
Especially for ensemble type team. Comics. Yeah, you need something like that. Or at the very least, within the first page or two, you need characters referring to each other by name.
Exactly. Otherwise, for myself, I'm lost.
Same thing with introduction of characters and things like that when we just first see them and all of that good stuff. There's times it's like page 12 or 13 and you're like, I don't know anyone's name.
Exactly. Yeah. That's true. And I see that in the script as well. Frank is talking, like, there's two people here. Who's Frank? I don't know who Frank is. So I have to kind of guess my way to knowing who Frank or Paul or whoever is.
They won't actually be spoken to directly. You're just like, okay, so someone here is, but then you find out no one is Frank. Frank is some character who's not even appearing.
Frank is off panel. Okay.
Yeah.
Wish I knew.
He's not even going to show up in the story. It's like, so he gets a name. No one else has a name yet. But this guy who's not even in the book, he's got a name. All right. I've seen that happen. Eric says, I agree somewhat. This might not be a popular opinion, but I like the narration in Spawn. No, that's fine. I always thought Spawn's narration was fine. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like what I'm talking about in terms of like that third-person narration. And that's what I think really, really heightens some of it. And then you get, of course, some of the narration coming straight from Spawn and things like that, too, that inner monologue that's occurring. So let's see. Cam says the worst experience reading a comic is that what is going on. Pause. Yeah. As soon as you're confused, as soon as you've been pulled out of that comic, absolutely. Now the thing is, a lot of these things that we're talking about aren't necessarily the problems of the letterer. They're mostly the problems of writing and editing. But yeah, there are times within the art of lettering where the letterer could do a really good job of saving the right, or at least making them look more competent than they are. So it's good to know that you do stuff like that. All right, so we're going to wrap up the show right here, right now. Rick, thank you so much. If you guys want to check out Rick's work, if you want to hire him for your comic, and straight from me, seriously, I don't give many people an endorsement when it comes to lettering. It's a big time. Like I look at lettering and I'm like, it's not good. I take the microscope out. I wholeheartedly endorse hiring Rick as your letterer.
Thank you.
So yeah, if you're looking for a letterer for your comic, talk to him, hire him, put him on your comic, and you can check out his website at, where is that?
Lettermatch.com/lettering. We will see samples and a contact form to reach out, or just lettermatch.com. You'll follow the links and be able to find me there.
Perfect. So the link is also in the description of the show. So go there, check it out, and I'm guessing on your site as well. I'm not guessing, but you've got samples. You can see what Rick's doing. You can see what he's up to, graphic design-wise, all that other good stuff too, and even art-wise as well. Eric wants to know, do you use Twitter? And yes, you do.
I mean, I have Twitter. I'm on it all the time. I just scan through the feeds, but I rarely interact. I feel like I have nothing really to say. But yeah, I'm on Twitter. I see stuff.
You've got your Where is that? Right there.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right
There it is.
Yeah, there.
Light a Match XL
Excellent.
on Twitter.
Twitter and
All right.
Facebook, and on Instagram, it's just Light a Match.
All right, very nice. Everybody, take it easy. Thank you for joining us tonight. This was a great show with Rick Joseph. He's a comic book letterer, graphic designer, and artist. If you guys want to learn more, like I said, go to that link that's in the description. And if you like this show, give it a thumbs up. If you like the channel, you like the videos we do on here, or I do on here, I should say. There's no royal we. It's just me. If you like the interviews and all that good stuff, you're into comics, the paranormal, whatever it may be, we talk about a lot of different things. Me with the we. I'm used to being on the alternate channel and talk about all of us that I talk about on the channel. Make sure to subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, all that good stuff. I'll be back tomorrow night with... We'll see if it happens. With John Malin this time. Last night was the strangest thing in the world, but it was a good 45 minutes with the chat. Tomorrow night at 9 o'clock Eastern is when that show takes place. And thank you guys so much for being here with us tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. And again, seriously, I can't stress it enough. It is so important. If you're a comic book letterer, and you're out there and you're doing... I'm just going to say, you're doing God's work. If you're doing a good lettering job on a comic, you're saving that comic. I've seen lettering make an amazing comic look horrible, and I've seen good lettering make an okay comic look pretty good, look competent, look confident, look like they know what they're doing. If you're out there and you're making your comic, you're looking for a letterer, make sure, get a good letterer, hire Rick Joseph. You won't be disappointed. Everybody, take it easy. Rick, thank you again so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Love talking to you about this stuff. And everyone, have a good night. See you guys tomorrow.
Bye.